Welcome to Season 4, Episode 1 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
And I'm film watcher Greg Ralph.
Our first episode, Greg, of the 4th season.
And not without its trials and tribulations.
That's right. We are in quarantine due to COVID-19, so we are doing this from each other's homes.
And normally we do this where we're literally sitting cheek by jowl in front of a microphone.
That's right.
We are now about, 20, 30 minutes drive apart.
That's right.
You've given me some stuff to make it look like I know what I'm doing. And it'll work or it won't.
So this episode, we're going to talk about some bad movies. Just some legitimately bad movies. The movies which people just go, you know what, they are bad. They're just been bad at the box office. They shocking movies. So the first film we're going to discuss is the year 2000's Battlefield Earth.
And then we're going to look back to 1986 for the George Lucas produced film Howard the Duck.
And the third film we're going to discuss is 2003's Jiggly.
Okay, well, why don't we start with our first film, Ricardo?
Sure.
Why don't you bring us into year 2000's film Battlefield Earth?
Okay. Directed by Roger Christian, who won an Academy Award for set decoration on the original Star Wars, comes this year 2000 film, Battlefield Earth, which was based on a story from L. Ron Hubbard, the creator of Scientology. Now, this was John Travolta's pet project. He is a Scientologist, but apparently that was irrelevant. He just liked the story. It's the year 3000, and Earth is a wasteland run by the Cyclos, a violent race of large aliens who have ruled Earth for over 1,000 years. Humans are now slaves, used to strip minerals from Earth, essentially gold. Some primitive humans, however, hide in remote areas, thinking all is lost for their race. Enter hero Johnny Goodboy Tyler, Barry Pepper, who believes he can be the one to lead a rebellion on the Cyclos. He leaves his tribe and his girlfriend Chrissy, Sabine Carcenti, with hunter friend Carlo, Kim Coates. Suddenly, they are captured by a band of Cyclos and sent to a slave camp, which is a dome-shaped place which protects the Cyclos from the Earth's atmosphere. Here, they meet head of security, Turl, John Travolta, and sidekick Kerr, Forrest Whitaker. Turl had done something bad involving a senator's daughter, so was sent to this planet and given this security job as punishment, really. He really wants to get back, however, and plans to search for gold in areas he shouldn't due to high radioactivity, which is bad for their race. If he can secure a lot of gold there, he'll impress the heads of the Cyclos. Anyway, Turl thinks Johnny is perfect to lead this mining operation. Turl shows Johnny the crumbled ruins of a human past long gone. It's revealed the Cyclos took but minutes to conquer Earth. He also teaches via an ultra-fast learning machine a lot of human history. They even go to a destroyed library, and Johnny gets all emotional over finding the Declaration of Independence. Okay, to move through this, Turl gives Johnny a team of human miners for this operation, but Johnny and his team have other plans to revolt during this operation and win back their planet. My goodness, what a convoluted mess this film is. Nothing works here at all. The script is bad. The acting is appalling, and this would have to be John Travolta's worst ever performance. The direction is all over the place. The cinematography is 95% Dutch angles. Why? I mean, I've talked about Dutch angles before in a past episode. I mean, the Dutch angle is a type of camera shot which involves the setting of the camera at an angle. Okay, now it's used to make an audience feel a little uneasy at times, and it's used to great effect in films like The Third Man. I think this is where we discussed it. But here, why use it so much? I just don't get it. The colour grade of blue tones is disgusting. I mean, the only things that are okay are the sets, which he won an Academy Award for in Star Wars. So he was a good set decorator. I can understand it. The effects are bad. I mean, this was a year 2000 film, and we had films before this, like The Matrix. I mean, even Star Wars The Phantom Menace smashed this film in effects-wise. But it's just so boring. I was struggling through this film. It was really, I was struggling through it. I mean, poor Barry Pepper, so good in Saving Private Ryan, then finds himself in this drivel. It's not so bad it's good territory, this film. It's just so bad. It bombed so badly at the box office. Greg, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know where to start. I really don't. Now, a bit of background to this particular episode of our podcast. We were going to do this about a month or so ago, and then quarantine lockdown happened, and so we've had to wait a month. And I watched all three of these films the first time, and then after a month, some of them are so bad I couldn't remember anything about them, particularly this film, just the impression of thinking, oh my God, this is so dire. And then when we were doing this, I thought, no, I've got to be professional, do my homework, and so I'm going to watch them all again. Of the three films, this is the one I most dug my heels in with myself to go back and watch. I didn't want to watch it because it's just bad. So look, you've covered up off a number of things, like, you know, the fact that the camera's always tilted, or almost always tilted, and you don't know why, unless you're meant to feel unsettled through the whole film. Dunno. This, to me, it all looked really, really dated, number one, but I just felt...
Yeah, it does, and it does effects-wise, right? It does look dated, but then I thought to myself, oh, that's just because it's the year 2000, but then I thought, hang on a minute, 99 was The Matrix. Like, there were much better effects than this.
I felt like I'd seen it all before. So at the beginning, I felt like I was watching the original Planet of the Apes. So much so that I kept waiting for, is it Johnny Goodboy, one of the main characters?
Johnny Goodboy.
Yeah, Johnny Be Good. I kept waiting for Johnny to say, you know, take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. And that would have made the film a bit more enjoyable. But all the way through, it felt like it was borrowing from other films. Unsurprisingly, Star Wars. There's a big Star Wars influence on the latter part of the film.
It just reminds me, it's just trying to be Star Wars. I mean, that whole battle through the spaceship and shuttles and stuff like that, it was just all Star Wars to me.
He said it was Harrier fighter jets against these, you know, Battlestar Galactica Star Wars kind of flies. Yeah, the start of the film to me felt like Planet of the Apes. All those scenes, once we got into the Cyclones world and it was all, you know, greys and blues and so on. Yeah. And particularly in the shopping mall early on, I felt like I was watching 90s music videos. I kept thinking of Russell Mulcahy. And all the tilted angles and the hammy overacting, I felt like I was watching the old...
so bad.
I felt like I was watching the old Batman TV show. The Batman TV show knew how to do camp, you know, in a way that this movie doesn't. It looks like It looks like it's trying without even meaning to try, but it doesn't. But at least on the Batman TV show, whenever you're in the bad guy's headquarters, the camera was always at an angle. But what's interesting is apparently each of the bad guys had their own angle. So Catwoman would be X degrees to the left, Joker X degrees to the right, and so on. So it was planned. Here it just feels like maybe they had a wonky, you know, hinge on the tripod or something. It just keeps happening. It makes no sense. But do you know what went wrong here? Why the special effects are so bad?
Why?
Do you know the story of franchise pictures?
I do know. Yeah, I do. They went bankrupt after this. I mean, they bought on a lot of the productions which nobody else wanted to do. They got a lot of the pet projects.
Yeah, they got a name for doing pet projects for A-list actors. But do you know what happened with the budget?
Remind me.
I will.
I think I've read the...
Because I've been Googling. And basically, they overclaimed their budgets to scam their investors. So they claimed that the budget for the film was $75 million US, but in fact it was $44 million. So about half of what they claimed it was. Of that $44 million, quite a lot went to the big stars like Travolta and I imagine Forrest Whitaker as well. So as you sort of take those slices off, the scam and then the big payouts for the lead actors, even though Travolta put about $5 million of his own money into this film, you start to see it's actually, for something which is trying to be quite ambitious, it's something with quite a modest budget. And the guy who was I think it was the cinematographer on the film, was later quoted as saying he'd never had so few lights on set, which might explain all the blues and greys. And so you've got a director, as you said in your intro, you've got a director who is from a set designing background, so he's got an eye for that, he's taking that seriously. But the other things that he handed off, like cinematography and special effects, there's probably a bit of a financial reasons why these things were pretty crap as well.
Absolutely. But the thing is, it's everything. It's the screenplay as well. You've got a story which is all over the place, which essentially is just a revolt against the race trying to take back Earth. But it's just so convoluted and messy.
Well, there's a story behind that as well. So initially, the script was written by J.D. Shapiro. He's credited as the co-writer. He wrote it. People weren't very happy with it. It got given to Corey Mandel, who gave up script writing after this. I watched an interview with him, and he was talking about how he's become a very good script writing teacher now, and he learned from that to listen to himself because he kept being told by everyone around him, don't take the job, don't take the job. It's a really important point in your career. You should do something for the love of it, not the money. They offered him too much money. He did it. He handed it off. 2 days before he handed it back, the studio pulled out of the picture, and then it ended up with Franchise Pictures, who were basically a financing house, not a studio. And then other changes were made to the script, which he no longer had control over. So now you've got a third set of hands all over it. And allegedly, while they were filming, the rushes were being shown to the senior people at the Church of Scientology, who were making directions that went as well. So you had so many fingerprints over this thing that was so convoluted to start with. How was it ever going to succeed?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
But I think, and Travolta's performance is truly horrible. He almost does the wahaha stuff all the way through.
He does. Oh, his laugh is just atrocious.
He thinks he's really clever.
It's a comedy act. Yeah.
He thinks he's really clever because he says something and people think it means one thing, but because he put a particular word in there, like, I won't do this, doesn't mean other people can't do this, and thinks he's insanely clever. Now, that's something that you sometimes develop as a parent with your kids, and they see through it pretty quickly, but no one around him sees through it. The bartender, his sidekick, they must have heard this dozens and dozens of times, and they never expect it. And the declaiming, I wrote down my favourite line, which was, while you were still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies. And that's how he delivers it. Like, it's bad. If I can replicate his performance, it's bad.
It's actually quite funny because John Travolta actually said that the wittiness of the script reminded him of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I've heard that said.
Now to put Pulp Fiction, one of the classics of cinema, and compare it to this, I tell you what, it's all over the place, and I think a lot of perspective is lost there.
Well, Shapiro, who wrote the first version of the script, apparently is so witty, he thinks it's hilarious that in his blog or whatever he writes, he calls his penis Willy Wonka. That's the kind of guy we're talking about. There were really odd choices made for shooting. So when Johnny in the mall early on goes crashing through layer after layer of display case, glass.
Oh, the slow motion.
And that's when I was really thinking of Russell Mulcahy, actually. And he goes through layer after layer in that slow motion. It felt a bit like he was doing Rutger Hauer in Blade Runner. Then at the end of it, Johnny is completely unscathed. No scratches, no bleeding, no nothing.
Nothing.
Or the reaction shot of Turl, John Travolta's character, when he's told he's going to be on Earth for the foreseeable. They have all these overextended reaction shots around the table that just feels artificial, like someone actually doesn't know what they're doing as the director.
Yeah.
And the other weird thing was how coy they were about violence. So a number of times violent things happen, but you don't see it. So when Turl shoots the legs off the cows, you kind of half see it out of the corner of your eye, like a leg go flying off in a very bloodless manner.
Well, it's PG, so they obviously wanted it to be PG and for the masses as well.
The explosive collar happened off screen the first time.
Yes,
and
it did.
Then when Turl shoots off Kerr's hand, again you don't see it, but then you see a pleasantly rounded stump just there. Again, no blood, no sinew, no mess.
Nothing.
Just like someone had gone in and buffed it into a nice round shape.
I came into this film thinking, I think I'm not going to mind it. I came in thinking, I think this is probably harshly criticised. So I went into it thinking, with a fresh mind and thinking I might enjoy it. That's what I thought. No, it really, really is bad. It doesn't actually set up the characters at all. So it doesn't really set up Barry.
I didn't find anybody relatable.
Nobody is. And because you don't know them. Who knows them? You just at this desert place, a guy's there, Barry Pepper's the character's there on a horse.
At an angle.
at an angle. Always at an angle.
Yeah, but he can ride his horse at an angle. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And then you've got his girlfriend, who's just such a superfluous character in this film, the token woman of the film and the token love story.
Well, she kind of comes back in importance later on as a hostage kind of thing. But yeah,
as the hostage,
she's got nothing
which is
to
like
do.
the biggest cliche ever. And then. Then you've got Kelly Preston's long tongue.
I know.
Right next to John Travolta.
Which they must have thought was hilarious on set.
Oh, they would have thought it was really hilarious. Oh, yeah, they would be going, oh, people are going to love this. Oh, no way.
But what I also didn't understand was the Cyclos, looked like they could really have a decent weekend in a spa, get their hair done, their nails and everything else. They look dreadful. They're in these clodhopper boots that mean they can't run, and they've got terrible teeth with greenish stains and so on.
Yes.
But the humans who've been meant to live in the hills and the caves for 1,000 years all have perfect teeth, beautifully shaped eyebrows.
That's true.
John's girlfriend, whatever her forgettable name is, has got natural coloured lipstick
Chrissy.
on. Chrissy.
Quite.
She's got lipstick on as well. Like they're better coiffed than their persecutors, their overlords.
True.
Like nothing makes sense in this whole film.
No.
Why didn't the Cyclos know about Fort Knox of all the gold there?
Yeah.
And when they bring the gold back, supposedly, which they've been digging up and shaped beautifully into bars for him, because he wouldn't accept just, bits of metal out of the ground, he goes, oh, right, scans it, it's gold, and he goes, oh, this is okay. Then, he's not a good thinker. And they're convinced...
But there's nothing to say. But there's nothing to show that why he thinks Johnny Boy is such a great leader, or why he's showing him all this stuff. He shows him all the inside and outs of their world. They're like, why suddenly he's teaching them their language? Why?
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
don't understand it. I just don't get it. It's like, what ulterior motive does he have other than him to find gold? But if he's going to help him find gold, then why is he teaching him this? I just don't get it.
Exactly.
I just didn't get it.
Why are they so convinced that humans can't reason? They know what the culture produced before, the Declaration of Independence and all the libraries and statues and so on. So why would they think that they couldn't think anything? They had no idea what they liked to eat. Were they so incurious?
Yeah, that's right.
Even if you didn't like them or care about them, you'd want to understand them so that you could use them effectively. They just seem to be such shallow thinkers.
Oh, I laughed so much when he found the Declaration of Independence. I just thought, what? Oh my goodness!
Was there anything you liked about this film? Were there any redeeming features?
The sets.
Okay, for me,
that's it.
For me, I actually quite like the learning machine, and I like the creature who came on at the start and said, "I'm not worthy to be your instructor," and I've probably been extinct for a couple of centuries now. It felt a bit Star Wars-y, that character as well, but I quite liked that special effect and the way it was sort of pumping everything in visually through his eyeballs. And the other bit I liked the little jokes about the statues being people who'd been frozen. And when they saw the mannequins inside the shopping mall and they said, boy, they must have really offended the gods, that made me chuckle. But it was like 2 moments in what's basically a 2-hour film.
I found this so hard to watch. I actually haven't watched a film and been so bored for a very long time.
I think this film is, of the three of them, is probably the one that you could say is so bad it's good in the right circumstances.
No,
but if you were with mates and you were drunk, I saw one thing.
Well, we have to get into that too. I could watch anything.
No.
Drunk, and I'd find it a bit okay.
I read one thing that suggested that the film would be a great drinking game. Every time the camera tilts, you all have to scull.
Every time John Travolta laughs.
Yes, or does one of his little tricks. He says, I won't do it, but I'll get that guy over there to do it. Oh, I'm so clever. Yeah, you could actually make a little bingo card, and when those things happen, you mark them off, and when you get a row, you drink or something.
Okay.
As someone who's almost a complete non-drinker.
What are you going to give this?
I am giving this half a point out of 10. So for
half a point.
So for me, It rates exactly the same as Showgirls, which also enjoys a really terrible reputation.
Come on, no. It's not okay.
Do you think it's better than that?
I think Showgirls is much better than
that.
Oh no. Okay, no. I'm giving it 1 out of 10. Okay. I'm giving it a 1 for the sets, and that's it. But no, you can't even compare it to Showgirls, which is so bad it's good, and it's watchable.
No, it's not. I remember quite clearly. I gave Showgirls half a point out of 10 for that nice tasseled fringe dress she wore at one point, and the support actress whose name I've forgotten. I thought she was quite good.
Gina Gershon.
Thank
Gina
you. That's
Gershon.
right.
Yeah, she is good in that, actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
and for this, I'm giving it half a point out of 10 for the learning machine and the mannequin joke, and that's it.
Okay, I think we've said enough, and we've smashed this film enough.
Oh, no, do yourself a favour. Go... No, I can't even say that. No, avoid it like the plague.
So the second film we're going to discuss is 1986, Howard the Duck. Greg, take us away with this one.
Howard the Duck lives on Duck World, a duckified version of our Earth, but egg-shaped. One night, he's accidentally beamed to our world by a group of scientists, landing in a back alley in Cleveland, Ohio. After rescuing Beverly, Leah Thompson, from some thugs, Howard and Beverly become friends with possible benefits, and he ends up managing her all-girl band. But Howard longs to return home, and this becomes a possibility when he meets lead scientist Dr. Jennings, Jeffrey Jones. But the beaming goes wrong again, and Dr. Jennings becomes possessed by a dark overlord intent on taking over the world. It's up to Howard, Beverly, and inept assistant scientist Phil, Tim Robbins, to save us all. Howard is performed by 8 different people, 2 suit performers, 5 puppeteers, and voice artist Chip Zien, which is a Hollywood name if I've ever heard one. I think Howard's realisation is the best thing about the film, especially for the mid-80s. We've seen hints of Howard as a CGI character in the recent Marvel films, but I like the way he's presented here. But that is the best thing about this film. The problems here are the story and the direction. The story's not too bad at the beginning. You can forgive that it's oh so trapped in the 80s, and with time, you can see that may even work in the film's favour. Leah Thompson brings a sweet innocence to Beverly the year after her performance as Marty McFly's mother in Back to the Future. And I quite liked some of the Duck World puns, such as film posters for Splash Dance and My Little Chickadee with May Nest and W.C. Fowles. But the opening scenes also held aspects of the film that I didn't like. Howard is a sleazy character, in keeping with the original comic books, but I found these aspects off-putting and misjudged. Whether it was on Duck World with his duck playboy centerfold, or the topless duck in the bathtub he goes crashing past. Or on Earth, where his first job is in a sex spa, or the obvious shots of Beverly leaning away in her skimpy underwear at bedtime. But secondly, I was bothered by plot holes all the way through, beginning with his passage through space without any breathing support, both inside and between the laser tubes. In fact, the story makes less and less sense in the latter half of the film. I couldn't understand why the police were so intent on capturing Howard, who was more or less an innocent bystander to the lab accidents. In fact, John Landis was originally slated to direct this film as a close friend of executive producer George Lucas, but he backed out once he read the script, allegedly because he felt that all the police car crashes were too close to the Blues Brothers. Yeah, right, Mr. Landis. I also couldn't understand why the cafe patrons were so intent on attacking Howard and trying to cook him. But interestingly, I discovered that an uncredited Geordie McLean, who plays the waitress, has had another claim to fame as the co-inventor of the Tingler head massage device. But the story really fell apart with the arrival of the Dark Overlord. He was worse than a Bond villain in narrating what was happening to his innards, which frankly felt like lazy script writing. His bodily restoration at the end is unbelievable, after we were told that his internal organs had been destroyed, and we saw that he was spitting acid and had been exposed to a nuclear core. And just how did he know the earthbound coordinates for the Nexus of Sominus? This movie is truly bad. Apparently, when it was screened for Universal, the studio's executives left without commenting. The 2 production heads allegedly got into a fight about who had greenlit the film. Whether that's true or not, one of them shortly afterwards left the studio. When the film was released in late 1986, it bombed at the box office and with the critics. Director Willard Huyck and his co-writer Gloria Katz, who both went to film school with George Lucas, left for Hawaii and refused to read the reviews, and Huyck has not directed a film since. It's considered one of the worst films of all time and won 4 out of 7 Razzie Awards, including Worst Screenplay and tying for Worst Movie with Prince's Under the Cherry Moon. I'm sure it's been said many times before, but this film is really Howard the Turkey. Now, Ricardo, I know I owe you an apology for letting you think that this was a kid's movie, but how did you go?
Okay. Yes, you did. And I thought it was a kid's movie, so I sat my 10-year-old son to watch it with me. I thought this is one we could watch together because I looked at the poster as well as Howard the Duck. This is great. So then it starts. Then there's duck boobs. Then there's play duck. Then there's little duck condoms. Then there's Leah Thompson coming on to Howard the Duck saying, let's go all the way. And Howard's little hair, his little feathers come up like an erection. Oh, my goodness. He left. He was like, no, this is not. He said, this is so 80s. I've got to get out of here. And he left, right? So, and I'm just thinking, this is just so awkward. And
Awkward?
It is
Awkward or awful?
It's an awkward and awful film. But I like the references as well. There's a few good references in there. But all the way through this, I was thinking, this is actually a really expensive movie. There's a lot of very expensive set pieces in this. The effects aren't bad for their day. The whole car chases, the smashings, the effects of the monster, all of that. I mean, the makeup. It's an expensive film. They put a lot of money into this. But I was just thinking, how could they get it so wrong? How could they look at this and read the screenplay? John Landis did, obviously, and think this is worth pumping this much money into. I don't get it.
Well, you've got to remember that Lucas was on a roll with Indiana Jones and so on.
It doesn't matter. Like, I still think you read Indiana Jones' screenplay, read Howard the Duck screenplay, you'd find something very different. I didn't like the way Howard the Duck was portrayed in this. I thought the voice, I don't know who actually played him. Who played him?
Chip Zien. Well, in fact, the voice wasn't done till after they'd finished filming. They didn't have anyone lined up. They auditioned people like John Cusack, Martin Short, Robin Williams. Eventually, they went with Chip Zien because they felt that his nasally voice worked well for the part. But because he hadn't been cast until they began editing, synchronisation was very difficult. A bit like we're doing with this quarantine thing.
They can't actually communicate with each other as they're performing.
No.
So who the hell was Leah Thompson acting with?
A stick? Oh, no, sorry. The costume was there. And the costume,
yeah, I know.
And the costume would have absorbed a lot of budget too, because they made a number of those. Sometimes it was a puppet, sometimes it's a guy in a suit.
I just found it so odd. It's a really weird film because it doesn't know what it wants to be. Did it want to be a kids' film? In which case they should have just run with that, because if it's a kids' film, you run with that and you go with it. And I think
the chase with the hang glider thing
was
towards
great.
the end was a bit reminiscent of E.T. and films like that, which are family films.
Well, interestingly, my son left the room, but when it came to that hang gliding sequence, he started watching again and said, I really like this. He was actually wanting to like it through the beginning and was getting into the character and whatnot, but the sleaze aspect of it, the adult parts of it...
Well, that was all driven... That's driven by the character. That's the character from the comic books.
Yeah, but, that's a comic book for adults.
Yes. Oh, yes.
This is a movie that's marketed like it's a kids' film, but it's not. It's quite gross. When Leah Thompson is coming onto the duck, and she's quite bad in this. I really love her actually as an actor. I really like her. And I love her in the Back to the Future films, and
she hasn't got much
she's
to do.
very sweet. Well, she doesn't, and
other than pose in her undies, yeah.
Well, that's right,
and play her songs.
She's quite a weak character, and that end song, Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck. It just stuck in my head for hours. I was actually whistling it because it just stuck. I really had to just go and listen to something else because it just stuck in my head so much.
And now you've done it to me. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that's a Howard the Duck, and to all of our listeners. There's quite a few good set pieces in it. The Jeffrey Jones is Jeffrey Jones.
Yes, Jeffrey Jones.
Well, Jeffrey Jones. He did the best he could.
Hey, look, he really committed to the part.
He did, and he said that afterwards. He said he felt proud of it, even though it stank. all the way through the movie, I was thinking everybody had a ball making this. They would have had a ball. All of the crew, they would have laughed at a lot of the jokes, thinking this is wonderful. It's just one which doesn't transpose well to an audience, to us. Bestiality is not something which I find, terribly amusing, and it just felt gross, especially when she says, "He's my boyfriend."
Everyone had the decency in the cafe to turn around and look shocked.
Well, that's right, exactly. But you're right about that scene, though. Everybody gets really over the top, wanting to kill him and cook him when he's a talking duck.
Meanwhile, there's a guy in the corner who's shooting out sparks and laser beams and contorting in face, and no one's paying attention to that.
That's right, and putting full electrodes everywhere, and look, it's just weird and weirdly directed.
I found that in scenes when Howard leaves Duckworld and arrives on Earth and then encounters all these characters, I just found that really chaotic. No sense of choreography of the action, no sense of what they're really trying to communicate here. And in fact, no real sense of him a character at that stage. They tried with that answer machine in his apartment and so on, but I just felt like the whole thing was out of control and that somebody somewhere thought that they were being really funny, but they weren't.
I didn't mind that ending. I didn't mind it. I thought the monster when suddenly the monster comes
I'd
out.
seen it all before. But that monster really felt to me like a tribute to Ray Harryhausen, who did all the stop motion animation for the, I think, 50s or 60s Sinbad film. So it felt like a bit of a cinematic tribute, and I didn't mind that.
I didn't mind that either. I thought that was actually quite good. And then they're all coming down, and they're going to shoot the laser beam into there. And the actual monster itself was actually well designed. I actually didn't mind that at all. The mouth was quite scary, and my son was very...
When it came out of the scientist's mouth?
Yes, that, but also, even when it's a full monster, that big mouth, it was quite well designed, I thought, because, it scared actually my son, who was closing his eyes at being scared of the big mouth. But then as soon as it started sort of moving, he went, "Oh my God, that's so fake." And I went, yeah,
but even when he was the Dark Overlord and he's got Beverly under his arm and he's hauled her into either I think it must have been the back to the lab. Did you notice the upskirting shot?
No.
Oh, so he's dragging her under his arm, and she's kicking and screaming, and the camera's from mid-distance, is kind of looking up her skirt and her undies and so on. Again, after the episode in the bed, I kind of felt like this is really all just that little bit off. And maybe I was sensitised by the earlier parts, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I'm not sure about that. What did you think of Tim Robbins?
Look, he was just a bit hammy. Just a hammy character.
I thought it was a caricature, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely was a caricature. I thought, jeepers, where he's gone as an actor, you would never sort of know from that part at all.
No,
but what a talent! He's such a talent. He's a great director.
Yes.
He's a good actor, but that doesn't really do him much service in his career. I sort of hated that he was in this movie because he's such a talent. And
Bull Durham, which really was where he came to real notice, was 2 years later. So this feels like he's trying to climb the ladder into where he wants to get.
Yeah, but Howard the Duck. Yeah.
What about the narrator at the start? Did you realise who that was?
No.
I was thinking it would be someone really, really famous, and I had to go and look it up. And it is, but it isn't. Do you know who Richard Kiley is?
No.
You would absolutely know his face. Now, I know you're a fan of the recent film of The Little Prince.
Yes, absolutely.
Have you seen the original one made in 1974 with Gene Wilder and...
Parts of it.
He plays the pilot in that.
Right, well, I haven't seen the pilot part. I saw the Gene Wilder part.
Oh, okay. Well, anyone who looked him up would know his face. He did lots of TV work. Not a lot of well-known films, The Little Prince and back in 1955, The Blackboard Jungle. But I thought he did quite a good... he felt like the right kind of voice for that part. But again, these were kind of glimmers all the way through.
Yes.
Let me tell you about this film's particular claim to filmic history. So, apparently, at the time that this movie was released, George Lucas had just built his $50 million Skywalker Ranch complex. Because he spent so much money on that, he saw the success of this film as his way to get back in the black.
Yeah, right.
But it bombed, but he had to start selling off assets to stay afloat. And his friend, Steve Jobs, the CEO at Apple, offered to help by buying his newly launched CGI animation division for a price well above market value. And Lucas was immensely grateful. And what Lucas sold to Jobs eventually became Pixar. So without the failure of this film, Pixar wouldn't have ended up in the hands of Jobs and the people he had, and might have followed a very different trajectory. So bad as this film is, we've got something to be grateful for.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Everything happens for a reason, doesn't it, Greg?
And yes, and finally, did you spot the cameo of Thomas Dolby?
No.
Do you know who Thomas Dolby is? She
No.
She blinded me with science.
No.
Oh, he was a one-hit wonder in the 80s, and he wrote the original songs for this film.
Dolby, I just think of stereo.
Well, yeah, it was his stage name. He makes a cameo appearance as the bartender in the rock club where the big fight happens.
Right.
So for aficionados of the 80s and who are more my age than yours and understand maybe who Thomas Dolby was, if you're going to watch this film, at least watch out for him.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, I'm just going to talk about that. What I loved is the license. Is that Howard the Duck's license? He's from Washington DC. He expires on Hatch Day. Date of hatch, 9th of the 8th, 58. Sex, male. Feather, white. Must wear corrective lenses.
Yes.
That's what it says. Yeah. It was quite funny anyway.
Well, listen, I have one big question about this film. You know, apparently Leah Thompson was on the circuit a couple of years ago trying to get a sequel made.
Are you serious?
I'm serious that apparently that's true. So read that as you will. But there's a strong sense that Howard the Duck will be re-entering the Marvel comic universe. So he's appeared in the end notes of 2 of the more recent films.
Where?
As a CGI character voiced by Seth Green. And interestingly, as I say, he's done a CGI, not in the suit with the feathers and so on. So he's first seen in Guardians of the Galaxy, which was 2014, where he's seen as a living exhibit in the Collector's Museum when Gamora drops in. And then he's also shown in the sequel, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in 2017, where he's shown having a drink at a bar while flirting with a woman. He was going to be also a cameo appearance in Avengers Infinity War in 2018, voiced by Ken Jeong instead, but that was cut for some reason. And he's also seen armed with a blaster in a crowd of heroes in the final battle of Avengers Endgame. So there's these little kind of Easter eggs, and I'm well aware of the joke in Easter eggs and a duck, but anyway. So they're doing these kind of Easter egg things with him in these Marvel movies, and there is a suggestion he might get his own film. And I think the big question will be that if they do that, how will they make him work in a contemporary way without being sleazy? Like, how will MCU manage that aspect of his persona?
Well, if he's sleazy, goodness me, if this character is sleazy, make an M to MA film, right? It's very easy.
Well, the Marvel films usually are M, aren't they?
Well, they are M, right? So you can actually, but a lot of kids see them though, so they have to think about that. But if you're going to make a Marvel film, hey, look, Deadpool
was pretty ripe.
Is R-rated or MA to R-rated, right? So I think it's MA. In America, it's R-rated. And kids that don't watch that one, right? So if you're going to make a Howard the Duck, go that way. Go full on. Do it. You know, do it Deadpool style and go that way. Don't try and mash a kid's film up with an adult film. Just choose one and go with it. And then you know what? It'll succeed. Because if Howard the Duck was a kid's film and they treated it like a kid's film, it would have worked as a kid's film. You would have just followed it and gone with it. But the fact that they've mashed up these other little parts, these adult parts to it, just makes it gross and awkward when you know.
Well, actually, Deadpool is a good point of comparison because Deadpool is fully sex and violence.
That's right.
But it's not sleazy. It's clever.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
or they'd have to go that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine to see a Howard the Duck in a Marvel universe, but you're going to have to go that way. You just go full on, go all out, go adult, do it. And we'll love it, and we'll appreciate it for that, and go with it. Anyway.
So, what are you going to give Howard the Duck?
I'm giving it a 3 out of 10.
I gave it 2. I gave it 2 because I think they tried here. Unlike Battlefield.
Yeah, that's why I've given it a 3.
Battlefield Earth, I don't think they were really trying. Well, they were trying in a different sense, perhaps. But they tried here, and I do actually like the duck costume, even with its erection simulations.
Yeah, I agree. The duck costume is quite good.
But it's a 2. It really is dated, and I think it was dated when it came out.
Look, I quite like the references. I like the sort of the kid aspects to it. I like the set pieces. I like the hang glider set piece. I didn't mind the end. I like the monster stuff. So I'm giving it a shot on those levels. But overall, no, it just doesn't work that well. So that's why I'm giving it a 3, because I did appreciate some parts of it.
And Cabaret's still ahead.
Don't even get me started.
Okay, for the final member of our bad film trilogy, Ricardo, you're going to talk to us about Gigli, or Giggly, however you want to handle this. And I think it's really appropriate that we go from a film called Howard the Duck to a film whose most memorable line is, "It's turkey time." But tell us all about it.
Okay. Directed by Martin Brest, who made films such as Beverly Hills Cop, Scent of a Woman, and Meet Joe Black, this film centres around local low-ranking LA mobster Gigli, the title's name, played by Ben Affleck. He's hired by his higher-ranked boss, Louis, to kidnap a mentally challenged young brother, Brian, Justin Bartha, of a powerful prosecutor in New York City. They want to use him as a bargaining chip to save another New York mob boss, Starkman, Al Pacino, from prison. Gigli's able to kidnap Brian by promising to take him to see the filming of Baywatch, Brian's favourite show, and now holds him hostage. Enter Ricky, Jennifer Lopez, a lesbian assassin who's been hired unexpectedly to oversee Gigli's job and make sure everything goes to plan. Now, besides being very attracted to her, he doesn't like being watched over by a woman. He also can't stand that she's a lesbian because he's so attracted to her. They get questioned by a detective, Christopher Walken, who never returns, and they just wait it out and begin to fall for one another. And they also start really liking Brian, who's quite sweet. Now, the film takes a darker turn when Gigli is asked to chop off Brian's thumb and send it to New York as a threat. Gigli and Ricky just can't bring themselves to do this. Then Ricky's ex-girlfriend, Robin, shows up at Gigli's apartment, upset and accusing Ricky of changing sides. Then she dramatically attempts to suicide by slitting her wrists and is rushed to the hospital and then survives. But while there, Gigli sneaks into a morgue and gets another thumb to send. Now, when it's discovered that the thumb is actually not Brian's fingerprint, Gangster Starkman is less than impressed and takes action. Look, this is quite a weird film. It's competently made, I must say. It had a budget, but it's the screenplay again that's the problem. The characters are just awful. Gigli himself is so unlikable. He's not tough, and his whole persona is just off-putting. Ben Affleck would have struggled so much trying to make anything of this character. I really think that. And Ricky the same. I just don't believe she can hurt anyone. There is no way she'd be attracted to him at all. He acts like a teenager most of the time, and when she meets him, he treats Brian awfully bad. I mean, the film doesn't know what it wants to be. Also, a comedy, a gangster drama, or a love story. It doesn't do any of these things very well at all. It's not unwatchable. I wasn't bored through this. And it's definitely not the worst film ever made. And obviously this film got roasted by the critics. Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck were an item at the time, and I think the film was harshly criticised because of this. It's not that bad. It's just not very good. And I actually can't believe so many stars signed on for this movie after reading the screenplay. Greg, what did you think of Gigli?
I think it was interesting that you said this film doesn't know what it wants to be, and I think that's at the heart of what's wrong with this film. Because apparently there was an earlier version of this film that was shown to test audiences and didn't do well, and so they totally picked it up and kind of remade it out of what they had and refilmed a couple of scenes. So there's so much in this film that makes no sense whatsoever. But when you read accounts of the earlier film, then it starts to make more sense. And I think when they tried to fix it, they really botched it badly. So apparently in the real one, Ricky wasn't actually the assassin. The girlfriend was. And that's why she turned up to the apartment and why she knew where to go. That she was the hit woman who was having some sort of, crisis in their relationship. And as part of that breakdown of the relationship, Ricky decides to go and see what her life is really like and just lobs into this whole thing.
Oh my God, that makes so much more sense.
Yes, and why she says, my name's not really Ricky, for example.
Oh my God, that makes so much more sense.
And and because we had to rewatch the film and I'd read this commentary in between, I could see how it made a lot more sense. And so that her being tough was really what was happening with those boys in the fast food place. She was play acting the toughness all the way through the film.
Don't get me started on that scene. That scene there, where Ben Affleck's they're about to get into a fight, with these guys, with these local guys in a cafe, and then Jennifer Lopez goes up there, Ricky goes up there, and pretty much talks tough and gets them to calm down.
And then Larry, Gigli
smashes a computer out of one of their hands.
Breaks it in half.
Their laptop, and breaks it in half, and they do nothing. They would have got up and tried to smash him for that. There's no way anybody at that time with a $2,000 laptop, they're just going to sit there and go, "Oh, that's okay."
No, they were sitting.
It's just bad direction.
They were sitting there, and they probably say to each other, "Man, that's Ben Affleck. He's cool. It's okay."
Come on.
Anyway, let me keep going about this other version of the film.
Anyway, that was a shocking...
Christopher Walken's character made no sense whatsoever.
No way, never returns.
He drops in, he starts talking about pie in your head and all this weird kind of stuff. Well, it turns out in the original version, he was actually working for Al Pacino's crime lord the entire time. And he comes back later in the film. There's some sort of confrontation in a factory or something where his character arc, if you like, is more rounded and fits more into the story. So that they think they can go to him to save them from this horrible situation with Al Pacino, and in fact, that's snatched away from him. That makes more sense.
Oh my goodness me, that makes a lot more sense.
And in the first version, when they eventually land at the Baywatch film set, Larry pulls over. Ricky is so shocked by the violent confrontation they've had with Al Pacino that she comes clean and tells him who she really is, that her real name is Rochelle, but she's not who she is. And that makes sense of things like, the fact that Larry, Gilly, when they first meet, says, "I haven't seen you around and you don't look like a contractor," because she's not. And there's that woeful line which justly has entered the vernacular of, bad movie lines, to say that she wants some oral sex. She says, "It's turkey time, gobble, gobble." Well, in this version, that makes more sense because she's put on this whole persona and she's trying to talk tough as she imagined her character would, but it's not who she really is. So that makes more sense.
Oh, it even gives more. That even gives more sense to the mother liking her.
Yes.
And whatnot. That just actually
and
makes a lot more sense.
At the end of the film, Larry decides in the earlier version, Larry decides to do the right thing and turn Brian, who's the one with the cognitive disability, turn him into the cop, and they meet up in a warehouse, and then Walken gets another, full-on Christopher Walken kind of speech. He reveals he's actually one of the bad guys, and they end up having a gunfight. Larry shoots Walken dead. But he gets shot in the gut, so he's bleeding.
Yes, Affleck is.
Which is Brian sees that and says very matter-of-factly, "You're bleeding, Larry." But Larry says he's fine. He drives him back to the Baywatch, and he watches selflessly Brian having that great time with the Australian actress on set, because he's got a thing for Australian voices, while he dies. And meanwhile, Rochelle, Ricky, has driven off into the sun with his car.
That is actually a much better film. I just don't...
And the film ends with Larry dying, and it ends on his face as he looks out to the ocean, which is his fantasy of, the clean place. He's found it, and he has his escape by dying. So that makes a lot more sense as a film, but someone hacked it, and I think probably tried to make it more of a love story between two, people from the wrong side of the tracks, and it just does not work.
No, it doesn't. It's all over the place.
The girlfriend makes no sense. Christopher Walken makes no sense. Al Pacino is just doing Al Pacino. I was quite bored of his character.
Absolutely. Of course. He's only in it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
With all of those things, even if they made it that way, I still really didn't like the character at all of Gigli. I didn't like him at all. I don't like the whole tone of the film that, it's like a male's sort of a male dream of being able to turn a lesbian into being straight.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, really, and when Ricky comes in to see Gigli, and there's this sexual tension between the two, which is just why. Like I said, he treats her very badly. He treats Brian very badly.
But he goes on a journey. She brings it out in him.
Oh, I can see that, but come on, and then, the sequence when she's doing the exercising. Oh my goodness, man! And she's turning him on. Oh God, I was just sitting there going, oh no, I was just bored. I was bored by that.
I felt gauche, and I remember thinking, thank God I'm not watching this with my teenage sons. I wouldn't know where to look.
Look, she's gorgeous.
Yes, she is actually, and I don't know that I've actually seen many films she's in. I thought she had a lovely presence in the film.
The first thing I saw Jennifer Lopez in was U-Turn, which is Oliver Stone's U-Turn, and with Sean Penn, and I thought she was very good in that. And then I watched her in Out of Sight, which is Steven Soderbergh's film, and with George Clooney, and she is wonderful in that. And in fact, that's a great movie. I really loved Out of Sight.
Haven't seen either of them.
It's very well. They're both good, and but I thought she was a great up and coming actor. So when she began the whole music career, I thought, I hope she doesn't stop her performances because she's a really good actor. I really liked her, and she does have a good presence in this. It's just her character is a bit now that I know where the character was, it would have been much better. But I was just thinking through the whole film, you're not an assassin. I don't believe you at all. So, and she wasn't.
Yeah.
So, it's just confusing. That's it. You know what? Hearing that annoys me.
Because
it could have been such a great film.
Yeah.
Test audiences don't always get it right.
Well, here's a good example of that.
I know there's a lot of money that goes into films, and I can understand if a test audience says, "Oh, I didn't like that," then you'd probably get a bit of cold feet because there's so much money riding on it. But
let's talk about the budget. This film's budget was $75.6 million.
Yeah, it's a big budget. But
what do they spend it on? So they think that Jennifer Lopez cost $12 million. Okay, that still leaves you about $65 million. It's largely a one-set movie in the apartment. There's some exterior shots like on the beach and, in some other houses and so on. But, at least 50-70% of the action is set in that one set on the apartment, right? So I don't know where the money was spent unless it was on a lot of reshoots.
Who knows what other parts they shot?
Well, they could have been.
You just don't know.
They could have been very generous to Pacino and Walken, perhaps for doing what are basically a few days' work.
They made some bad decisions, obviously, but I still think the criticism of it is harsh. Is too harsh.
It's pretty bad. I mean,
No, but it's not. But no, as I said in my opening, I still think it was very watchable. I wasn't bored at all through the film. I know I had holes in it, but I still wasn't bored.
So much of it, like the story doesn't make sense in parts, and we know why for a lot of it. No. I mean, I get annoyed whenever because I watch and read a lot of whodunits, right? So when characters, particularly police officers. But when characters are handling something, no gloves, putting fingerprints all over it, I get edgy.
Yeah.
I get edgy in the same way I get edgy when characters don't put their seatbelts on and they drive and look at each other as they talk. But when they go to that sort of, postage centre and they buy the envelope to put the thumb into it to send to a federal prosecutor with their fingerprints all over it, and they lick the envelope as well, so there's DNA and fingerprints all over it. Yeah, and they're up close and personal with the clerk behind the desk, who Jennifer Lopez is flirting with. So they're going to be very memorable when they track it down. It makes no sense unless he's thick and she doesn't actually do this, so she's got no idea. That makes more sense. Even those dumb things in the story. But the dialogue, there's the one where she says, it's turkey time, gobble, gobble.
Right. Gobble, gobble.
There's when he says to her in that same conversation, those other guys who, and I'm quoting here, didn't know how to bring home the pearls when they were diving for oysters.
Yeah,
and I'm sitting there going, cringe. It's one of those films where they can. I'm going to be polite here. One of those films where they think they can use the F word again and again and again and again, and that counts as dialogue that illustrates character. And no, actually, it gets tedious.
Yeah, it does.
So,
it does.
I wasn't a fan. I think this would be a much more interesting film if they'd left it alone after the test audiences. It would have made more sense and all that stuff we've already talked about. But even allowing for that, I was happier to rewatch this than I was Battlefield Earth. Not least,
absolutely.
Not least because then I then knew how it had been tinkered with. But it's not a film I'll watch again.
No, it's not a film I'll watch again either. But it's to me, it's the better film of the three.
Yes, well, that reflects in my score. What did you give it?
A 4 out of 10.
I gave it a 3. And my little comment here is, yes, it is turkey time. Because this film's a turkey, but not on the same scale as the other two. Of the three, it's the one I most enjoyed watching the second time because I knew how they'd played with it and could look at it through that lens. But and maybe you might watch it again to kind of see how that was working, maybe. But I will never watch this film again. So for me, look, it's a 3 out of 10. And I've got a note here to myself that, in terms of this film, it is turkey time.
I actually think it's the best of the three, which we've talked about tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
I couldn't stand Battlefield Earth. I was so bored by it. Howard the Duck I was just grossed out by and then partly enjoyed and then not. This we're here. Well, I just went, you know what? It's a gangster comedy trying to be whatever it is. Look, I'm just going to go with it. And I did, and it was fine. Like I said, it's competently made. But I think, there's a much better story behind there now that I know about. But again, do a director's cut.
Fix it.
And I'll maybe watch something, So that concludes our Bad Movies episode of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast.
But don't just take our word for it. These films were actually selected by us off a list on Wikipedia's list of films considered the worst. And I think we probably agree, Ricardo.
Yeah, and you know what? Go to our Facebook page and actually just let us know what you think of them as well and whether you agree or disagree. So next episode, though, we're going to go into some musical memories.
And these are hopefully your memories as well as ours. Because what we're doing here is we've gone back to our season 1 and there's a whole lot of films we kept saying, we should do this one day, we should do that one day. And we haven't. We thought, well, let's go full circle. So we've gone back to those mentions from season 1 and we've chosen 3 films that are all musicals that, their time has come for our podcast, and let's see what we think of them. So the first film we mentioned way back in our very 4th episode, and it's 1979's Bob Fosse musical, All That Jazz.
And then we're going to go back to season 1, episode 7, where we mentioned 2001's Moulin Rouge, Baz Luhrmann's film.
And then thirdly, we're going to do a film close to your heart, Ricardo, 2007's Once, which I haven't seen other than on stage, but you recommended way back in episode 6 of season 1. So, there's our 3 musicals for next time.
So thanks for listening to our first episode of this wonderful season 4. Different season, of course. We're not together. And we hope everybody's staying very safe out there.
Yes,
and,
of course.
And staying home during this time while we all get through this.
Yes.
So hopefully we're giving you some enjoyment through this time, and stay safe.
Take care.